To talk about The Prince of Egypt, I have to get the king of movie reviewers that I know from Facebook, and there's not going to be any blarring in this episode. Welcome to a brand new episode of Movies and Me, and today I've got one of the guests who I've been trying to get ever since I started the show because this guy is so freaking positive about any movie that he sees, even trying to give ones that are considered bad a chance. So I'm going to welcome to the show now. Please welcome the captain himself, Mr. Michael Kaye. How you doing, buddy?
Good. Great to be here.
Yeah, so I've already said it in the intro. You picked The Prince of Egypt as your movie to talk. So what is it about The Prince of Egypt that made it your choice?
Oh wow, there's so many things I could say about this, but the reason why is because it was not only one of the first just one of the first animated movies not from Disney that I grew up loving. One of the first religious movies that didn't suck for one, and two, just I think this is one of the first movies that made me appreciate animation as more than just like surface level entertainment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that.
I mean, like pretty much everything from the animation to the music, especially when you have a powerhouse team like Hans Zimmer and Steven Schwartz. Like this is the team that you want to get for like a big musical production like The Prince of Egypt. And I know you saw the movie recently. I'm actually kind of curious what you thought of the movie first, because I know I've seen it. I've seen the movie about hundreds of times growing up, but I like hearing opinions from people who've only seen it like for the first time recently.
Well, I saw it on Netflix this morning to prepare to record for this, and it was weird because I grew up with another Moses-style movie. You've probably never seen this, but it's like a straight-to-DVD thing called Moses, Egypt's Great Prince, and it's very cheesy, it's very cartoony, but I have kind of a nostalgic attachment to it. But this is kind of what I want from a story like Moses, because at its core, it not only did it feel like this biblical epic, but it was kind of like a coming-of-age story, and I really love those, so that's kind of my take on it. Is that something that you noticed as well?
Definitely. Now, here's what's going to get me in trouble with a lot of cinephiles. I think The Prince of Egypt is better than The Ten Commandments. I've been waiting to say that on like a big podcast like this, because I know it's an unpopular opinion, because The Ten Commandments is one of the greatest movies of all time. But here's my problem with it. I don't really get as much of an emotional connection with it. Yeah, the movie, both movies have the same like general plot, but in The Prince of Egypt, you spend more time with Moses and Ramses as brothers, as friends, whereas you don't really get to see that a lot, and you don't get to feel it as much in the Ten Commandments.
Yeah, that's something I notice as well, because I think me and you are very similar on this. You tend to go for movies that are more character-driven than plot-driven, because I've always said this on the show. I think you can enrich a simple plot by having great characters, but you can't have a complex plot with boring characters.
Oh yeah, I agree. Sometimes that can work. If the plot is already interesting enough, then it doesn't matter if the characters are at best serviceable. Like if it's a plot that you take great interest in. But for me, I would rather watch a character study of like something like Locke with Tom Hardy. I would rather see like character-driven movies that have a pretty simple plot than something that's overly complicated and can't be saved by the worst characters ever.
Yeah, I completely get what you mean, and especially since you brought up Moses and Ramses, I got one of these things where it was like, I assume you've watched Smallville, right?
Yep.
It's like watching Clark and Lex Luthor as friends, but you know one of them is going to turn bad, and you're sort of waiting for that. But Another thing that really surprised me about this movie is how freaking dark it is. Like, really early on, you see this sort of hieroglyphic painting of what is genocide of children. And that was just like, I kind of made this face where I looked at it and I stared at it for a few moments, and it stuck with me for the rest of the movie. But I really appreciate it for going that dark tone because I don't think a lot of animated movies nowadays would do that.
Yeah, and the irony is, more often than not, animated films get a PG rating. None have really been as dark as this movie, or even movies from like the 40s that are G rated.
One thing that I noticed here was the voice cast, because I reckon if this movie was made in live action, kind of similar to a movie called Gods of Egypt, and it had the same cast, it wouldn't work. But I never realized that it was Val Kilmer and Ralph Fiennes who were voicing Moses and Ramses. And was that a surprise to you to find out?
Yes and no. I first saw this movie on home video, wait, I think I was a little bit too young to see it in theaters, or maybe I just missed it. At the time, I wasn't as like plugged into the industry, so I just had no idea who the voices were. But like as I got older and actually looked up the casts, it did surprise me a little bit. But those two aren't the biggest surprises. If you look at the supporting cast, you have Patrick Stewart as the other Pharaoh, Seti, Helen Mirren as the mother, and then you have Jeff Goldblum, of all people. That was actually not as surprising because his voice is pretty recognizable. Yeah, but other than that, just on a macro scale, this is a really star-studded cast. Not too different from the Ten Commandments, which at the time had a lot of big actors. But for this movie, it I was impressed with how even though a lot of these were big stars, they were still they still gave genuine performances. Even the comic relief characters like Steve Martin and Martin Short.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up those two characters specifically, because there's a really easy way that you could make them very annoying, but they serve as part of what the storytelling in this movie does really well, and that's a lot of the visual stuff. Like, they'll do all these dances and kind of chants about the gods, and I'm not a religious guy, but when you can take religious aspects and make them interesting in a story like this, you got me on board.
I wouldn't really call myself religious either. I think I'm more agnostic, but the thing that always bugged me about modern day Christian based films is that they forget that the goal is to make a good movie first and to preach, second or third. And that's what I like about this movie. It's even if you're not religious, you can still just enjoy it as a sword and sandal musical epic. Speaking of the songs, let's get more into some of these. Are there any that stood out to you in particular?
Definitely the opening number stood out to me because it kind of reminded me of the opening of Les Miserables in a way, but it was done really well with the animation, and it felt almost like I was watching a live action musical, not a cartoon.
Yeah, Deliver Us is probably one of my favorite opening numbers, not just in animation, but of all time in musicals. I remember when I first heard that song, the first comparison I made was to Lion King, which is another Hans Zimmer composed score.
It's a good comparison.
Yeah, just like the scope of the animation, the beating of the drums, the grand choir. It's everything you want from an opening number of this kind of musical.
Is there any other of the songs that you can mention? Because I'm kind of blanking on them right now, but I can only mention the one that's near the end where it's Let My People Go.
Oh, The Plagues.
Yeah.
The Plagues is another good one because that's within the context of the narrative, it's sort of it's staged as a grand action scene, but also a climactic musical moment. Plus the animation in that scene is just brilliant too. I love red, one is shaded blue. That's like details like that is brilliant. My other two the other two songs that really stood out are, this one's not a song per se, but the burning bush scene. Again, there's so many great single scenes in this movie that will just always stick with me. The burning bush scene and Through Heaven's Eyes. That's the one that Danny Glover's character sings. Now, even though I love this movie, I can acknowledge if other people have some negatives. Are there any? Is there anything that stands out that maybe could have been improved?
For me, I think it slows down a bit when he leaves the castle, but it picks up pretty well, and there's a lot of really fun interactions between Moses and the other characters. But the fact that this movie started off with this sort of chariot race, and you see that scene tells you everything you need to know about Moses and Ramsey's relationship, because I thought it was going to be something completely different. I thought they were going to be at odds with each other from the beginning, but they have a really good brotherly relationship, and it makes it even more tragic towards the end. That when he does leave that, I was just sort of wondering, okay, I really want to see how Ramses is going to react to this. And even though the character interactions were fun and really well done, part of me was thinking, okay, that's the core that's driving this movie. I kind of want to get back to that. So it's not really a negative, but it is a part where I kind of slowed down with it.
That's understandable. I feel like that sort of like slow moment is just sort of a necessary evil, because I'm making a lot of comparisons to Lion King, but it does kind of remind me of that period before Simba meets Timon and Pumbaa, where he's running from the hyenas, and there's just a moment where he's just kind of laying in the on the plane, just kind of passed out, and then nothing really happens until the plot moves forward.
And you get this scene when he comes back, and Ramses, I don't know if you noticed this at first, but he looks completely different. Like he resembles a lot more of what the Pharaoh was in the beginning, but he's a lot more muscular, and he looks more like a stereotypical leader. And even though their scene when they come back is like they're welcoming each other again, and like, I haven't seen you in such a long time, the tension is just done so well between those characters, and that's something that's, once again, I think is very rare nowadays. And you could have easily gone a different route with Moses and Ramses, but they chose to make you care about them first before going into the whole rivalry thing.
Yeah, I think that's important for the story, because you don't want to just rush right into, oh, they're enemies, and then the 10 plagues come and just that's the movie. You need, even when Moses first comes home, it's not like they're going right from, oh, we're like the best of friends, to now we're bitter enemies. Like there has to be like a transition period too, and that's why I love that scene, especially towards the end when King Ramses makes like one of the greatest like facial transitions from, oh, I'm sad, my brother has changed, to, wait, I know why he's back, and I'm not happy about that.
And then when you have the whole, one of the things that Moses is known for, the turning water to blood thing, which is a really beautiful sequence, but I was kind of confused by how it worked on the other side from Ramses, because it looked as if the two other characters that are played by Steve Martin and Martin Short were trying to trick him. Is that something that you can comment on? Because you've probably seen this movie more than I have.
Oh, yeah. Steve Martin and Martin Short are they're con artists. They're not real magicians, and it's the most obvious when they're turning that bowl of water into blood. You can see the powder that they sprinkle in, and they do the same thing earlier with the song Playing with the Big Boys, where it's basically just a magic show where they turn the snakes or the staffs into snakes. So yeah, that scene was meant to deliberately trick the Pharaoh. into like discrediting Moses for his trick.
Yeah, and you could look at it as a way like, yeah, they're con artists, but were they trying to prevent a conflict there? Like, there's a lot of character stuff there that's it's like really subtle, and if you blink, you might miss it.
Actually, that's a good point. Obviously I get that they're like trying to one up Moses, but it is kind of unclear what like exactly what they were trying to do. I will just stick with they're just simply trying to one up Moses because they just want to prove that they're not intimidated by what appears to be a bluff, that if you don't let my people go, bad things will happen.
Yeah, and one thing I forgot to mention that's in the beginning that really stuck with me, and I'm sure it was probably a shock for you when you first saw it, is that I think this is the first in some animated movies where the main character actually kills someone in the beginning, and the scene where this guy is just whipping a slave, and Moses clearly doesn't like it. He's trying to stop it, but in that, he accidentally pushes him over the edge and he actually dies, and I was like, okay, this is confirmed. We already had the genocide with kids scene, but this movie's gone full freaking dark.
Um, I imagine at the time Disney was kind of glad that they weren't the ones making this, because this was one of those ideas that Katzenberg had before. I'm pretty sure he thought of this before leaving Disney, and so he must have been relieved that when Dreamworks started off, like he could finally get one of his passion projects off the ground without the mouse house saying, nope, you can't do that.
Yeah, and we'll go right back to the ending now with the whole Moses and Ramses thing turning water to blood. What surprised me is that you kind of expect like a final showdown and a battle between Moses and Ramses, but you don't get that. The battle is just their ideologies clashing together. And that's a really interesting way to go, because you brought up The Lion King. Even that has a final fight between Scar and Simba. And this one doesn't have it. It's all character based.
You know what? I think in a perfect world, this is what I would have preferred Batman v Superman to be. Not like an actual fist fight, but a battle of ideologies, which again is rare for for an animated movie. Usually the bad guy is like fairly two dimensional, like and he's like this big monster that needs to be stopped. And yeah, I guess from a certain perspective, Ramses is a monster for deliberately like ignoring Moses's plea to let his people go, because everything that's happened, all those 10 plagues, are his fault for not listening.
Yeah, I can completely agree with that. And we're heading into the wrap up stage now, and I'm really glad that you haven't listened to an episode of the show before, because this is going to be a really big shock to you. I want you to imagine that I've never seen The Prince of Egypt. So what are you going to tell me to get me to watch it right away?
Okay, so you want me to just like sell you on this movie?
Yep, exactly.
Okay, if you're a fan of if you're a fan of The Lion King, Aladdin, and all the other Disney Renaissance movies, but you wish they had, but you wished they had more depth, and wanted something more character driven, I think the Prince of Egypt will definitely satisfy that. It will satisfy your desire for more character driven and animation as opposed to plot driven.
Okay, I think that's a really good thing to sign off of. And Mike, I want to thank you so much for making the time to come on my show. I know you're really busy out there giving 5-star ratings to every movie that you see, but I want to let the audience know, where can the good people find you, and is there anything that you want to plug?
Well, you can find me at Twitter at CaptainK42. You can just find me on Facebook on basically every movie group ever. And check out my reviews on geeksgamers.com. We have a roundtable all about what is considered the true definition of horror. So check that out.
Okay, sweet. And you guys know how this works. As always, if you like this movie and you want to talk further about it, either leave us a comment below or use the hashtag #MoviesAndMe to help continue the conversation. Next week's a very special episode. For the first time in Movies and Me history, we're going to be doing a double bill. So you're going to be getting 2 episodes in the same week. And the people over at BFF, Ashley and Joe Davis, one of our best movie-related couples out there, are going to be joining me to talk 2 movies that are personal to them. Ashley Davis will be talking about To Kill a Mockingbird, and the lovely Joe Davis will be talking about The Big Lebowski. So look out for that. And as always, if you like this show, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you guys next time.